Hey guys, what's up? Today I'll be doing another video where I compare and contrast two albums within a band's discography, and today I'll be talking about none other than the mighty Dissection with their two albums, The Somberlain from 1993 and Storm of the Lights Bane from 1995. Now, I think it must go without saying that I am a huge Dissection fan, as I have used one of their song titles for my channel name. But I think this versus video is going to make for a pretty fun one because these are two desert island albums for me. These are two albums that are in my top 10 or 20 records of all time. And I remember when I first got into these, probably about around 3 years ago now, just for the whole summer, I listened to the Somberlain one day, Storm of the Lights Bane the next, and I pretty much did that for 3 full months, just listening to each of these albums every other day. And I still spin them all the time, but I have spent a lot of time with these records, so I'm really excited to get to compare them because it's going to be a close match for sure. But anyway, we will start off with their debut from 1993 titled The Somberlain. Now, Dissection had a couple raw sounding death metal demos before this, but this is where their sound really solidified and where they kind of made their mark significantly on the scene. And Dissection just really displays a great style of melodic black/death metal with a lot of atmosphere, excellent harmonies, super evil sounding riffs and vocals. And I think some people get really upset when you call Dissection death metal, which I don't understand in the slightest. Especially this album, I really think it can be referred to as black or death metal. Being that they are from Sweden, Swedish death metal is usually inherently very melodic and almost black metal style atmosphere. So I really think, not that it matters, but personally, I think this can be called black or death metal. Doesn't really make a difference, but what does matter is the music, and it is excellent indeed. Strong suit of Dissection is definitely their thoroughness when it comes to songwriting. John was a really good riff writer, and he could write excellent harmonies that would just be super emotional and add a lot to the very dark and mysterious atmosphere that this band could create. And this album starts off with some of the best songs of all time, Black Horizons and The Somberlain, two stacked Dissection tracks full of probably their best work when it comes to melodies and song structures. Just some great stuff. There's also definitely a lot of heavy metal influence on here, especially in the riffs, a lot of the harmonies. And John does a little power metal scream in Black Horizons, which definitely is a nice touch to the song. Another thing I really love about this album is the classical guitar pieces written by second guitarist, also named John. Not really sure how to pronounce his last name. Probably wouldn't do a very good job, but he played second guitar as well as the acoustic tracks on here. And that is a factor of the album that is a very big deal to me. I think most people might enjoy the acoustic tracks on here, but it's probably not the biggest factor to them, whereas it actually is to me. There's 3 distinct, short classical pieces: Crimson Towers, Into Infinite Obscurity, and Feathers Fell. And they're just some really impressive pieces. I think the really neat thing about it is they're all pretty short, filler tracks, but within under a minute and a half, there's established motifs and build to each of the classical pieces, which I think is really impressive that they can work such depth into more of a filler track that only takes up not even a minute sometimes. And it definitely changes the pace of the album a bit, but I think it is definitely very well done. Some other favorite songs on here come at the midpoint: A Land Forlorn, Heaven's Damnation, and Frozen. Just more really good harmonies, some really evil sounding tremolo pick riffs. And yeah, this album has just such a dark, bleak and pretty emotional atmosphere, especially one that's displayed on the A side of the album. As the album goes along, you get some of their older material, like The Grief Prophecy and Shadows Over a Lost Kingdom. But one thing I will say about this album, it's not necessarily a complaint, but I guess one part of why I think this album is a little bit flawed is the pacing is definitely a bit strange. I think this record is super, super frontal loaded. Um, like all the best songs to me happen on the A side. Black Horizons, The Somberlain, A Land Forlorn, and Heaven's Damnation. Those right there, I think, are all the best tracks on the album. And it definitely stays strong, but I do notice a dip in quality. Those are more of the longer songs on the front, and to me, they're just a lot more well done. However, on the B side, there are some excellent songs. My favorite track on here would be the last one, Mistress of the Bleeding Sorrow. Just really good classic Swedish style harmonies with the what's the interval? The minor third. That is what the Swedish really, really were excellent at. I mean, among all kinds of other harmonies, but yeah, to me that is just, that interval is absolute ear candy. And Dissection were really masters of using pleasing harmonies and some dissonant harmonies in a lot of their tremolo picked riffs. So yeah, just overall an incredible, excellent album, and one I hold very, very near and dear to my heart. I know this album like the back of my hand, and it is one of my favorite records of all time. And I absolutely love that artwork, not by none other than the mighty Necrolord. So yeah, from 1993, Dissection, The Somberlain, one of the most important pieces of metal history right here. And the same definitely goes for their follow-up album from 1995. This came out originally on Nuclear Blast, I believe, and this is Storm of the Lights Bane. Another phenomenal and excellent release. This is an album that I definitely think has a little bit more of a black metal tinge. I have no problem with it being called death metal, but this one definitely has a little bit more of a black metal style with kind of some more tremolo picked riffs and a lot more blast beats than the first album. The lineup stays the same except for the second guitarist is switched out. But right when you put this disc on, you are hit with the opening track, At the Fathomless Depths, which is this really, really neat intro track that sets the mood for the album. Once again, as with pretty much every Dissection song, really, really excellent harmonies. I think there's even I want to say there's a third guitar going on, so you get really cool 3 guitar melodies along with some symphonic orchestra hits, which is definitely really neat. After that, you get into the true opening track, Night's Blood, which you can tell this band really, really matured on this release than their previous one. They were kind of going on a trend of writing more in-depth and longer songs, and I think they really hit the nail on the head with this album in that way. Each song is very, very well done and can stand a lot better on its own, where I think the A side of Somberlain has songs that are just as well done as the ones on this album. However, when you get to the B side of the Somberlain, the songs feel a little bit shorter and it feels like there's a dip in quality. And this album definitely fixes that issue. The pacing is much better, and each song is just really, really memorable and has a lot of excellent things going for them. Another favorite on here is Unhallowed. That verse riff is one of the most evil and menacing guitar riffs I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, just some killer stuff on this album. One thing I will say where I prefer the Somberlain over this in terms is of the acoustics, partially due to the departure of their second guitarist, who went on to form another band called Cardinal Sin. But anyway, he did not play on this album, and I think the absence of his acoustic guitar playing is definitely a big factor for me. There are some acoustics on here, but it's mostly steel string stuff, and it's not really in a classical sense. However, the acoustics are still very well done, and they sound really nice. The production is definitely a bit cleaner on this album, and yeah, each song just really stands alone and has its own distinct characteristics. Probably a contender for my favorite Dissection track, Thorns of Crimson Death, on this album. That track is excellent, along with the closer, Soul Reaper, which, well, that is definitely a pure black metal song. I mean, they definitely are influenced by both death and black metal, but if you want to hear some just pure black metal, listen to Soul Reaper. Wow, that song's excellent. Especially there's some vocal lines near the end that will send shivers up and down my spine. And there is also a very, very well done closing acoustic piano track titled No Dreams Breed in Breathless Sleep, which is an excellent closing atmosphere to what this album has to offer, which is really just a continuation of the debut, but it's cleaned up a lot. It's a lot more mature. Production's better. And I really think this is the kind of progression you want to see from a band when going from an already strong debut to a second album. This is another excellent piece of black and death metal history. So, when it comes to choosing the two albums, which do I prefer? It is actually a pretty easy choice for me, which is a little bit strange considering how much I love both of these albums. But it's funny because the one I'm going to pick, I prefer it, but I also, from an objective viewpoint, recognize the other album as more objectively impressive, if that makes any sense. It's kind of weird in that way, but I guess that's how my choice will go. So I am probably in the minority just by a little bit. I'd say most people prefer the other one, but my choice is for the debut, the Somberlain, for a couple reasons. First of all, I think Storm of the Lights Bane is the more mature and the better album, but for some reason I find myself preferring this just a little bit more. And I think two reasons. First is the classical guitar tracks. I really, really love those. I'm a big sucker for that kind of stuff. And second is the atmosphere. The atmosphere on here is a lot more bleak, and I would say it's like almost a little bit depressing, where there's great atmosphere on Storm of the Lights Bane, but it's a bit more focused, and it's still cold sounding, but there's something about the harmonies on this album that just creates for a bit of a darker atmosphere for me. But you cannot go wrong with either of these albums. And as always, if you guys want to voice your opinions in the comment section, I'm always down to hear that. So with that being said, that will conclude this video. Two unbelievable albums that I will die by. These are like albums that I will be buried with in my grave. Phenomenal pieces of music. The first two Dissection albums. So yeah, thanks for watching.